KPQ and KPQ.com.
10 minutes past 1 o'clock on the Friday edition of The Agenda, the show with no agenda whatsoever. And we say good afternoon to our very good friend and intrepid reporter out and about. This time calling in from New York. It's New York Vinnie talking about cars and the greatest ones, the greatest SUVs that he's got on his list. Good morning and good afternoon, Vinnie.
Mikey, how are you, my good friend? What's going on?
I'm good. What's your exact location, sir?
I actually am in Pennsylvania in a 5-mile-long traffic jam on Route 80 in Pennsylvania. So if you're in the area and you're listening to this, you probably aren't. But just in case, you never know, don't take the alternative Route 934. Don't get on Route 80. You'll sit there for hours like I did until I met a friendly female cop who said, "Follow me."
Well, Vinnie, I talked to you just yesterday. You were in Staten Island, New York. What happened there? You got in your car and took a drive.
Got in the car, took a drive. We had our, I belong to a couple of these automotive press associations, and we got in the car yesterday and took a drive up to Bear Mountain and drove a bunch of very nice cars around the windy roads of Bear Mountain. And it was a great event. I did that one, and a couple of weeks ago there was the Mudfest event, which is the Northwest Press Association. Everybody tries to get together and figure out, if I lived in the Northwest, which you do, well, what kind of car would I want to buy? What would be, a great car for me to buy that would, number one, be functional, number two, say, I live in the Northwest, and number three, show your pride. And since they stopped making cars in Wenatchee years ago,
yes, they did.
Have to look around a little bit. Yeah, the Ford dealer, not the dealer, but the factory, moved to Seattle. I mean,
yeah.
I couldn't... it was like Colfax and Pullman. One got to college, the other got the traffic light.
Well, if you're putting together a list of the SUVs, you probably have the attention of my audience because a lot of them are getting ready to buy one for the weekend. So before they go to the dealership, they should know which ones you and the other writers for the Northwest Automotive Press endorse as the very best of the year. And what would be number one? I guess the Subaru, right?
Well, actually, oddly enough, Michael, the Subaru did not make the list this year. One of the things is you can't vote for a vehicle 2 years in a row.
Oh, I see.
Subaru has a brand-new vehicle called the Ascent, which is the first 3-row Subaru, but it's not out yet. It'll be in dealers probably, I think, next month. So that couldn't get voted on because it's not out in dealers yet. So for the first time in my memory, a Subaru did not make the list. That doesn't mean it's not a good car or anything like that. It just means that we take it for granted that most people in the Northwest are going to go out and look at a Subaru. There is some news with Subaru, and that is that they are coming out their Crosstrek, which is a wildly popular compact crossover SUV, or CUV as they like to call them, will be out in a plug-in hybrid, which means you'll be able to drive at about 100 miles without using a drop of gasoline. So that's the big news from Subaru.
And Subaru, doesn't look exactly like an SUV, does it? They still have that station wagon design for some of their more popular vehicles.
Right. Even the new Ascent, which is their biggest vehicle, still looks like a Forester on steroids.
There you go.
It looks like they just pumped that thing up a little bit because what they do with Subaru is they put a lot of glass in it. It's a very what they call a greenhouse type of car, which gives you good visibility. You can watch the kids in the car if you need to get out for a second and scream because they're not behaving. It's a family car, I guess
sure.
You would call it. And the great thing with Subaru, and I'll get to the other ones. The great thing with Subaru is they have this new system called EyeSight, which is winning awards all over the place as possibly for the money the safest safety system, or the best safety system in a vehicle. It's mounted up on top of the windshield. It looks out. It'll stop the car. It'll keep you in the lane. It'll brake the car if you come out into a situation where somebody runs across. It looks in the back of the car. It's really, if you're thinking safety, number one, you always think Volvo. Number two, if you don't have, $80,000 to spend, you go with Subaru. Now, that being said, the Hyundai Kona really came out as a small SUV that really, this is a car that's named after a place very near and dear to your heart, Hawaii. But for small SUV, something to jet around town with and so on and so forth, a little subcompact, really a great car. Another surprise was the Volkswagen Atlas. That was, and I drove one of those yesterday, and I've driven it a couple of times. 3 rows of seats, Volkswagen engineering, all the safety equipment you could possibly want. An excellent, excellent car. A little on the pricey side, but, not so much that you wouldn't take a look at it and say, I really like this car, and so I'm going to go out and buy one, as opposed to one of the other cars in its class.
Volkswagen and Subaru sometimes have price points that are a little toward what you would say would be a luxury car or a performance car. But Hyundai comes up with a similar product and manages to keep their price down. How do they do that?
Volume.
You're going to blow it out to the bare walls.
I guess they work fast because you never know what's going to happen with North Korea,
That's right. Let's make this car and go home.
Get out of here quick. They do a couple of things. Number one, Hyundai and Kia is owned by the same company, so they have a lot of repetition in their parts in these two cars. So that brings their money down. Their cost per car down. Number two, and maybe more importantly, is they make them in America. And right now, it's less expensive to make a car here. The Kias are made in Georgia, and the Hyundais are made in North Carolina, I believe. And as a lot of foreign cars are now, what used to be called foreign cars. And so their price for these cars stays down, and they work on a lower margin. Plus, they give you their warranties. I mean, they give you 10 years, 100,000 miles on the Hyundais.
That's a hell of a deal.
Yeah, so, I mean, and that comes out of a few years ago when the cars weren't that good. They wanted to make sure that they could sell them, so they said, listen, basically, if you buy it, if something goes wrong with it, we'll take it back. They became the Nordstroms. Remember, they took the page right out of Nordstroms in that they said, okay, we'll stand behind this thing for 100,000 miles. And if you get 100,000 miles out of it, don't bring it back. But if you don't, we'll fix it for you.
I like that.
They're fantastic cars. Matter of fact, Volkswagen now with the Atlas and the Tiguan and their other new cars have done almost the same thing. They've come out with a 6-year, 60,000-mile warranty, but theirs is bumper to bumper. So anything goes wrong with that car in 6 years, they're going to fix it for you, which is something to consider, something to know.
Let's look at this list that you put together for the top SUVs of the year. Who's on there besides Hyundai, Subaru, and Volkswagen?
All right, let me go down to categories real quick. The subcompact was the Hyundai Kona. Compact and midsize was the 2018 Jeep Wrangler. Jeep has done an excellent job with their Wrangler. A little high on, gas, uses a lot of gas. But other than that, you can go anywhere with that thing. As far as the SUV we talked about, 3-row for the Volkswagen Atlas. If you want a luxury SUV, the BMW X2 was voted the best in the Northwest. For a pickup truck, the 2019 Ram 1500 Rebel made the list as the best pickup truck in the West. And all around Northwest Outdoor Activity Vehicle of the Year, the 2018 Jeep Wrangler Unlimited. I've driven the brand new Jeep, just drove it yesterday, as a matter of fact. And the Jeep Wrangler, if you want to go off-road, you don't want to spend $80,000 for a Land Rover or, something like that. There's nothing like that Jeep. And they're coming out pretty soon with a little Jeep pickup truck built on that same body. And you're not going to be able to buy one. They're going to be so popular.
We're going to run out of time here if I let you keep talking about those SUVs. So let's switch speeds just for a second to the muscle car of all time, the Camaro, which is celebrating a special 50th anniversary. I guess Detroit's up in arms about this. Are they happy?
Oh, they're very happy. Mikey, 50 years for Hot Wheels. Now, were you a Hot Wheels guy when you were a kid?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, well, think about it. The first Hot Wheels came out 50 years ago. So to commemorate it, Chevrolet came out with a Hot Wheels Camaro that I drove yesterday. It was one of the extreme pleasures of my life to sport this car around Bear Mountain. It was orange and black, like the old Hugger Camaro, and it was a replica of the first Camaro, the first Hot Wheels car, series of cars that had a Camaro. And they're only making 5,000 of them, so if you want to buy one, it's going to be the most expensive Hot Wheels you ever bought. Yeah. But really, just a fantastic thing by Chevy and Mattel, who makes Hot Wheels, to come out with a 50th anniversary commemoration of this toy.
You know, we've had a lot of success with the models that you've mentioned in terms of sales, but Ford did something in the last couple of weeks that was kind of a mystery. They just stopped making all their cars for a while there. Then they changed their mind. What are they going to do? Are they going to close those factories, or do they keep them going?
Well, they're at capacity with all these factories. They can't make enough trucks. I just drove the Ford Expedition, which is their new big SUV, and it's a fantastic vehicle. I was out on Staten Island with this thing, and Italian guys were coming up to me and wanting to buy it from me right in the parking lot. You know,
I'll buy that from you.
Hey, I'll buy that car from you. Give me that car. I'll steal it from you. So there was a thinking at Ford. They announced a month or so ago that they were going to stop making cars, that they were only going to make the Mustang and a Ford Focus that looked like a station wagon. Well, what's happened between now and then, as you probably know, you pull up to your gas pump, and all of a sudden gas is rapidly approaching $4 a gallon, and is there in California already. And all of a sudden now, the guys at Ford are looking at each other and saying, hummina. Did we make this move a little too soon? And even though they've developed their V6 engines to the point where they put out as much horsepower as a V8, it's still a lot of gas, and it's a lot of money. It's $75 to fill up a gas tank in one of those things.
Vinnie, we've been very good, and we talked about cars, which is our topic today. But now we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, it's baseball time. So put on your Mets cap. New York Vinnie and I talk baseball next.
You're listening to the Agenda.
Smile.com.
The Agenda with Michael Knight on News Radio 560 KPQ and KPQ.com.
Sort of a rainy Friday. Well, not sort of. It's a rainy Friday. I don't know why I said sort of. I don't know why. It had to do what the Giants should have done, and that is they off a lot of their salaried players so they can then find somebody who can hit the ball, or can anybody here play this game is what the question is, isn't it?
They shouldn't be as bad as they are, and they're not horrible. I mean, they're over 500. Part of what I think is going on with the Mets, and I can speak for them because I've been following them, them, the Mariners, and the Giants, as I always do, and the Pirates, is that they have a rookie manager who's made some mistakes. And I think part of what's going on with the Mets, and this shouldn't be, is that they, I hate to say this, but I think sometimes you get a rookie manager, and it takes a while for the guys to respect them.
That's baseball, isn't it?
Yeah, and a guy goes out and he makes mistakes. It means it's going to take longer to get those guys on the page that you want. It's not saying they're not going to get there. And they did a smart thing by getting rid of Matt Harvey. Matt Harvey was not going to be a good pitcher as a Met anymore. His head wasn't into it, so they got rid of him. They got Devin Mesoraco, the catcher, who might be something, although, guy from Pennsylvania, from Punxsutawney, as a matter of fact.
Oh, my God, no.
Yes, Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania. I don't know that he's going to be something, but he had a good year with the Reds a few years ago, and he keeps getting hurt, which is never good for a catcher, Michael.
No, it's not, because it hurts enough just being the catcher when you feel good.
Right. When you're a catcher, you got to suck it up. But they've got already 3 catchers on the disabled list, the Mets.
That's like the Giants pitching staff. In fact, it's like the Mariners, too. Every time you turn around, somebody's on the IR.
Oh, well, the Mariners, I mean, that whole, that's just, I mean, they just can't catch a break. I'm sorry. Is there a franchise that's more cursed than the Seattle Mariners? Now that the Cubs have won the World Series. I mean, you used to be able to say it was the Cubs, but now, to me, every time they start to get a little head of steam going, something happens, then you get this idiot Robinson Cano, who they're paying a ton of money, is the big piece of their offense. And what does he do? He goes out and does drugs that he says, well, my witch doctor or this doctor or that doctor or some doctor in some place gave him these pills and he should have done. When I'm making $25 million a year with my body, I'm going to tell you, Michael, I'm keeping an eye on what I'm putting in it, aren't you?
You should, yeah, that is an investment in the future, isn't it? And, of course, that investment cost him 80 games, so the future looks kind of cloudy right now.
Yeah, and to me, when a guy goes out and does that, they have to give his salary back. He not only hurt himself, he hurts the season ticket holders, he hurts the other people on that team, he hurts everybody. And the Mariners, listen, thank God they're getting, they've had some good things break their way the last couple of weeks, but this is a devastating thing for them. It happened to the Pirates last year, too, when they lost one of their guys with an 80-game suspension. And it hurt the club seriously. They should have been contenders last year, and instead they weren't. They get the guy back, and look, they're in first place this year.
So who's your team? Who's going to win it this year in the American and the National? I'll let you pick them.
Oh, wow, man. I'll tell you what. It's hard for me to go against the Astros.
Exactly. Exactly what I was thinking.
Really hard. Yeah, I mean, with the addition of the pitching that they got in the offseason, Lando with a full year, and getting the kid that they picked up from Pittsburgh, who wasn't going to be any good in Pittsburgh because his head wasn't into it. They got a great 1-2 punch, and their 3, 4, and 5 isn't bad either. And Mikey, when you got pitching and guys that can pick up the ball from the infield, you pretty much got the thing won, don't you?
We had pitching on my team. I'm a Giants fan, as you know, Vinny, and all our pitchers are on IR. Most of our pitchers are hanging out with a nursing staff through the day. They don't see the actual team.
Well, they come to the ballpark and watch.
Yeah, but for Baumgartner, that's just as dangerous as taking him on a motor scooter someplace.
Right. Now when is he's scheduled to be back, though, in a couple of weeks, isn't he?
He's thrown in the bullpen. They're going to put him, they're ready to pull the trigger on him. I say sooner the better. Let's find out if he has a career left.
Yeah, I think, listen, I've watched that guy pitch, Mikey. He's got a career. I mean, if he comes back at 50% of what he was, he'll be better than anybody they've had since Atlee Hammaker.
Oh, my God. Atlee Hammaker got into sales eventually, didn't he?
I think he did.
And it was a smart move. He never looked back, never regretted it.
He never recovered from the All-Star game.
No, he did not. And I didn't help.
All right. No. We took him through the coals many times.
We tortured him mercilessly. Yeah, I feel somewhat ashamed about that.
Yeah, him and Big Daddy, boy, Rick Russell, man. Between those two guys, no mercy. Absolutely no mercy.
I always got on Big Daddy because he wouldn't do his crunches before the game. Or his lunges.
He did his crunches. He just happened to do it with 2 cans of Schlitz in his hands.
Okay, that obscured the crunch. All I saw was the beer, I guess.
Yeah, well, I see that's the popular mistake the trainer made, too.
Yeah. Poor
Joe Oringo at the ballpark there. He had to go clean up all of his stuff after he dropped those cans, in the dugout when he was going up the stairs.
I remember that now. It's all coming back to me. Vinny, I'm sorry I had to let you go. Have a safe time there on the Pennsylvania Parkway. Wherever you're going, get there in a hurry in your brand new Testum car, and we'll talk soon, all right?
Mikey, I'll talk to you soon. It's always good. And remember, you keep your seatbelt buckled and always listen to New York Vinny because he doesn't know what he's talking about.
Listen to New York Vinny, gosh darn it. Thanks, Vin. Good to talk to you.
All right, Mike.
It's 1:30. John Brangwyn, our attorney at law, is next. We're going to be talking about the National Firearms Law Seminar in Dallas and what he learned and what he can teach you. So it's really all.